Good morning, everyone, dear guests in the hall and online. It's a pleasure to be with you. I am moderating this great panel to look more clearly into the state of the economy and the accession process. We'll start with some Q&A on my side, and then we'll open the floor from the audience. Well, let's start from the big change. So, Deputy Prime Minister Alaiba, it's a pleasure to have you here. Can you comment on how your job has changed now the accession process is in full motion? So tell us where you're focusing your energies right now in the next year, and where do you see the impact on the economy already?
Thank you, Rafaela, and thank you everyone for finding the time. It's great to be here again. We were here a couple of years ago. Well, it's a very philosophical question, but to put it short, it just became more. So there's just really, I mean, of course, the European integration is the one chance of our generation to change this country for the better, to put it on the right track, and to ensure the degree of prosperity and of opportunity that our people really deserve. Of course, and we have no time, and we have really, and this chance can and may run out. You never know how much time we have for this window. That is why we are determined to move as fast as possible in order to advance and to finally reach our destination. That comes at a cost. There is a lot of work in the government. There is a lot of activity. There is a lot of, I'm coming from Brussels right now. We're, just as an example, 20 hours in Brussels and back here, and then in a couple of hours back to Chisinau. So it's really intense. Right now we are in the procedure of screening, which requires a lot of, and this is probably the biggest exercise of teamwork that the government of Moldova might have had, because it's 33 working groups. It's spread throughout different institutions, different ministries, and all it takes for everything to get stuck is one of these processes to get stuck. And that means we have to work in unison and we have to work in sync. And out of these 33, 1/3 is in my ministry, so 10 working groups are in the Ministry of Economic Development and Digitalization. So yeah, we have a lot of work, basically.
Give us what you think is a realistic timeline to actually enter the EU.
Well, President has clearly stated 2030, and we believe it is very feasible. We believe we can do this. If I look, of course, it's easy to point at countries that have taken a decade or two, but also you have positive examples. You have countries like Croatia that have advanced very fast. So it really all depends on the dynamic inside the government, on the commitment, and on how serious the government will be about it. Not to say, to criticize any other country, but it's really all up to us. And we believe 2030 is very feasible to reach our destination and to be ready for becoming a fully fledged EU member. We are working towards this deadline, and let's say the sentiment of urgency is unprecedented from what I know Moldovan administration.
And can I ask you, I know that locally the fact that a referendum would be held anyway to confirm the process was well known, but not so much visible from the outside. Is the referendum that probably takes place in October, if I'm correct, is that something that could speed up your work? Could it reinforce your mission, or in reality it's cosmetic?
Indeed, there is a referendum planned. I am not sure that there is a date. Maybe there was something established while I was in the airports, but from what I know, it's somewhere to be determined within in this autumn. Now, it's first of all a chance for the EU integration to be permanentized, let's say. It's not a project of one government. It's not a project of one party. It's the idea of an entire society, of the whole population. And this is the message that our people, I am sure of that, will send very clear in this referendum. And this is what will make certain processes simply impossible to deviate or to delay or to revert, because it's about the people's will, and it's about entrenching the European integration in the constitution of the country as as I said, the main project and idea of for modernizing my country.
Perfect, thank you. Let me now turn to Katarina Hansen, your country head of the EBRD. Give us a sense of the work you do in terms of infrastructure. The Prime Minister also mentioned energy transition. I mean, we've seen Moldova doing enormous amount of progress in terms of business cycle and energy security. So you're now really hands-on on the long-term developments.
Yeah, yes, indeed. We do a lot in both energy security and connectivity. As a matter of fact, over the last 2 years, we have invested 1 billion euros in Moldova, and most of this, or a majority of this, goes to energy security and improved connectivity with Europe, that is road and rail infrastructure. And we're very, very proud of this achievement. There is also a lot of finance to private sector, both SMEs, and we use the EU definition of SMEs, which is up to 50 million euro turnover, which is quite substantially large companies in the Moldovan setting, and we're very pleased with the work they do. Lately, we have had lots of visitors from Europe, business delegations, companies coming to see what we're doing, how they can invest, to learn more about Moldova. And here I really like the heading of this event today, Capital Bridges, because most European companies that look at the country, look at the map and get a little bit concerned about the geopolitical situation. So most companies come through recommendations from their Romanian subsidiaries or partners. So we have lots of companies that come, they have spent a couple of days in Bucharest, and then they come over to Moldova to see firsthand what is going on, and everyone is very impressed. Deputy Prime Minister Alaiba spoke about the sense of urgency. There is also a sense of enthusiasm, and we see, for example, a lot of young, educated Moldovans that have worked abroad after they maybe have studied abroad and are now coming back to raise young families in Chisinau. Chisinau is a very nice place to raise young families. So we're very pleased to see this, and this is real talent that's coming back. So we're very positive, and we will continue to do as much as we can to support all the fundamentals for economic development and further investment.
In terms of funding cost for these projects and funding structure, where is Moldova relative to other countries?
EBRD has the same sovereign interest rate for all countries where we work, so it doesn't matter where we are. It's 1% over Euribor. In terms of private sector cost, well, now the base rate is quite low in Moldova. It's gone down, so it's affordable. And we are also, we take Moldova risk standalone. We don't look at the geopolitics. We will look at the country at its own merits. So I think we can definitely provide very attractive funding, and our funding is also long-term, which is also very important when you invest.
Perfect. Let me now go to Ari Naim, Regional Director at the IFC. What I would like to ask you is a bit of an insight in how you see, again, funding private sector, public sector in Moldova. Before you give us your insight, let me give a bit of background so that we have some numbers really in front of us. According to the Central Bank and EBRD projections, I mean, Moldova this year will actually be one of the growth tigers, really. at the EU level, because growth is forecasted around 3.5%, maybe up to 4%. Inflation is at target. Moldova has a target that is 5% plus and minus 1.5%. And interest rates are now 3.75, so actually meaningfully lower than regional peers. And last time we had this event, the growth picture was still compelling medium term, but interest rates were much higher. The situation was much worse. So give us your experience, maybe also put it into context of the last 2 years and relative to the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rafaela, and great to be here. So I would start by saying, it's really meaningful to be here in Bucharest because IFC has been present in the region for many decades already, but Romania is now the country in which we have our largest exposure in Europe, $2 billion of committed portfolio, and this year we have achieved a historic high. So this to say that we have a much smaller portfolio in Moldova, of course, but really being here to talk about the connectivity between Moldova and Romania, and of course the EU accession is really very timely and very encouraging. And what we are hearing from the government of Moldova is absolutely I would say extremely encouraging. IFC, we focus, of course, on the private sector as part of the World Bank Group. And I think this agenda is absolutely critical for Moldova. We all know. We all know that creating opportunities now in the country will require creating jobs in the private sector. And so the question is, how can this be accelerated? So you were asking about the past 2 years. I mean, yes, Moldova is going to be a champion this year in terms of growth, but it comes after significant success since the 90s that have been stalled in a succession of crises. So, of course, the COVID crisis, climate droughts that have stalled the agricultural sector here, and now the Russian war in Ukraine, which is obviously being a big Damocles spade when it comes to attracting investment. What can the country do in this context is really looking at the short term and looking at the long term. And obviously the EU accession is a great incentive to go into the structural reforms that the country have been needed for so long now. So in the short term, this connectivity with Romania, I think, as a hub towards the rest of Europe is really important. And so diversifying the energy sources in particular, interconnecting systems, reducing the dependence on gas is going to be quite critical. Second thing is opening up space for the private sector. And when I say opening up space for the private sector, I mean really looking at the difficult things that need to be done in terms of rule of law governance, but also looking at the competitive landscape between state-owned enterprises that are still a large part of the economy, and establishing a better rule of the game for private sector competition. And of course, also accelerating the green transition, and this is going to be representing a nice opportunity for the country. So, I mean, I could go on, but the question was, in the context of the past 2 years, I think what I would say is so encouraging to hear what we have been hearing this morning from everyone. And I mean, if we can consistently achieve on this short-term agenda and medium-term agenda, and looking at the medium term at the same time, I think indeed, I mean, we can hope for Moldova to be a tiger in this small part of Europe for the next 10 years.
Perfect, thank you. Let me go back to Dumitru. Since a lot of critical bottlenecks for growth really fall under your remit, Digitalization was mentioned in the past. I think when we had the first event here, we're really impressed with how skilled was the digitalization of the public sector already back then. And of course, digitalization allows countries to globalize on scale than never before. So I guess from your perspective, you have a lot of chapters. Of course, realistically, not all of them will be done quickly. But
They will be, of course.
Of course. But I guess in terms of supporting exporters, and maybe supporting also the green transition in terms of subsidies, legislation, and things like this, is there anything that you think the audience should know that you're working on that will make, a difference near term?
Thank you, Rafaela. Well, to put it briefly, if there is one idea that we are all led by, it's the fact that we cannot afford to grow by 2-3% in the next 10 years, because this is what will definitely guarantee Moldova, even in 10 years, the title of one of the poorest countries in Europe. So everything we do in terms of fiscal policy, in terms of economic policy, in terms of investment, in terms of prioritizing, has this very simple idea that we need an accelerated rhythm of growth of minimum 8-10% per year over the next decade, which is extremely difficult to sustain, but this is really what we need to aim for in our intervention if we are to get out of this trap, let's say. We really don't have another choice. So rather than looking at the potential growth and seeing that we can probably afford to grow by a couple of percent, which is true now, we are asking ourselves what we need to do in order to expand this potential and what we need to do in order to maximize our growth. And that, of course, is investment. I'll give you an example. If I want to have 8% of growth this year, that means around 350 million more in investment compared to what is projected. And exactly to support everyone invest, for SMEs, we are in a process of removing all the bottlenecks and all the bureaucracy of digitalizing all the processes. Of course, we don't want to digitalize everything. That is why these two go hand in hand. We are working on increasing the access to finance so that the SMEs can invest much more and much easier, because Moldovan SME sector is well below the EU average contribution of SMEs to GDP. So here we see high potential of growth. We are looking at friendly taxation, which is, Prime Minister mentioned the IT park tax regime, which is probably the most competitive offer that you might find on the continent for IT companies, and we recently expanded it to business process outsourcing with only 7% flat tax, full stop. But also we are among the 4 countries on the continent with 0% corporate income taxation on retained earnings for SMEs, and that's again to support the small and medium companies to accelerate their growth, to invest their earnings instead of me as a government taxing them and then giving them subsidies. I prefer to leave this money on their account so that because they know better. We don't want to. Let's think together what we are taxing when we are taxing revenue at the end of the year, if not investment and job creation. So this is why we took the example of Estonia, of Latvia, and made this reform. But it's not only about SMEs. Big companies, big investors need, of course, more specific incentives, which is why in a couple of months we will launch a new state aid scheme in order to, just like Romania has for years and any other EU country, in order to be able to subsidize investments in priority areas with up to 50% of the value of investment, which is very normal thing here in Romania, but we don't have something that is in line with EU norms, and that would allow the government to stimulate investment in productive, high-growth areas, which Prime Minister has also mentioned what we are looking at. And I mean, the occasion that we are with here is, of course, to ease the access of capital, the access of our companies to capital, and that is a massive unlock for growth. This can really accelerate our growth with 1 to 2% per year in the coming couple of years. I'm sure of that, and that's exactly what our companies need, big and small, and many others that we are looking at exactly in order to accelerate this pace of growth. Again, it's not an easy task, but this is the objective, and this is what we are looking at. Of course, huge opportunities come exactly from opening up to new markets, because Moldova is a small country, and if there is, Prime Minister mentioned wine and IT, and there is these are two sectors that are, you would think, not too much similarities, but there is one lesson from both, and that is, for Moldova exactly, and that is that both of them are massively oriented to export. We export 93% of our wines, and we export 95% of our IT services, and that is a conclusion for any business, for any sector that wants to make it in Moldova. When you invest, you have to look not at 2 million population market, you have to look at 500 million population market, which is the neighboring EU. That is why we are advancing as fast as possible in order to integrate into the single market, in order to open up our economy to investment and to trade with our partners, with our friends. Yeah, that's. I'll just stop here. Sorry.
Perfect, thank you. I mean, let's stay on the topic of interconnectivity. I mean, Katarina, and how would you comment in terms of what Moldova still needs, if any, in terms of railway, airlines, and all of these critical things? And what is your experience in terms of how good is the execution? And I guess since friendshoring is a major theme, especially in the region, is Moldova part of the friendshoring trend? Or is it missing something, or is it already on the map and we're just going to see the news flow soon?
Thanks. I think I'll start with the implementation of already ongoing projects. I'm very impressed with the way it's being implemented. There's a lot of attention from government and from all authorities and stakeholders on getting projects done as soon as possible, as fast as possible. I like this sense of urgency. It really helps to push things fast. Having said that, the investment need is large. We have to acknowledge that, and there is still a lot of additional investment opportunities, both in connectivity, in terms of rail and roads, but also in areas like logistics. So I think, and this is typically a private sector thing. So there are lots of investment opportunities there for the private sector. In the energy sector, again, there are a lot of ongoing investments. There is still a lot to come. One of the very promising areas that are about to open is the renewable energy tenders that will be launched later this year. In my opinion, this is the largest opportunity for FDI into Moldova right now. So I'm really looking forward to see this materializing. This will have both an impact on the economy because of the investment, but it will also have a great impact on energy security for the country. So it's a very, very positive development. Otherwise, in terms of air, yes, of course, we would love to have more flights. We would love to have more direct flights to different places, but this will come. This will come with investments. And if I may comment on something that Dimitri just said, you said that if you invest in Moldova, you actually can access so many more people than actually live in the country. Maybe we should change the grow in Moldova you have as your hashtag to grow with Moldova, because this is really what is happening at the moment.
Did you wanted to comment? Oh, no.
Of course, I agree. No, the truth is that what we are looking at right now is something that has happened to Romania, that has happened to the entire Central Europe, and that's exactly, we are right at the beginning of this process, where with the EU integration, with the investment, with the structural funds, we're looking at a period of transformation and of accelerated growth. I mean, things were changing and are changing so fast in already, you can't call them new EU members because it's been 20 years, but this is what we are seeing right now beginning in Moldova. So whoever invests right now is going to double, triple the money over a decade. So,
Perfect. Thank you. Ari, I would like to go back to you on this issue also of capital deepening, because of course the integration with the Romanian financial market is definitely going to be very helpful. But let's step back and give a bit of sense of where things are now in Moldova. I mean, I was looking at the funding structure for the budget deficit, and it's diversifying, but it's still heavily skewed to the short part of the curve. Give us, what is your assessment? How do you think it will evolve? Is this an hindrance really in the near term, or is just something that will come and it isn't stopping the country?
So, thank you for this really important question. Actually, I would dare to say that this is not something that is typical only in Moldova. And even in our global thinking on development in the World Bank Group, we are seeing increasingly the need to mobilize private capital as the only way for countries to preserving fiscal space to manage crises that we know now, that crisis is the new normal, right? So we will face new crises. We will need to preserve fiscal space and fiscal buffers. We need to rebuild fiscal buffer quickly after the previous crisis. And so one way to really bring additional funding is to really leverage the private sector, including in areas that are traditionally more state managed, like health services, transportation, ports and airports, etc. So one tool that we actually, as IFC, are leveraging quite a bit is public-private partnerships. And so not all public-private partnerships are good, but typically public-private partnerships that government structure with support from institutions like EBRD or like IFC are public-private partnerships that really aim at building the best sharing of risks and benefits between government and private sector, attract the best competitors with the right expertise to deliver. And so we think that's one of the tools that the country can mobilize to accelerate this attraction of private capital. Of course, in the short term, so private PPPs are also a great tool to position, to signal to the international markets that Moldova is open for business and for investment. And so when you deliver a flagship PPP on a port, an airport, a piece of energy, an auction in the country, and you advertise it internationally, I mean, it really does send this very strong signal of commitment that attracts a lot of interest and position the country on that investment map. Now, in the short term, in the very short term, I think I don't want to forget about the local economy, because when you have investors that are worried about, what's next across the border, so then you can count on your local economy to then take risks and invest. And for that, I mean, the two areas that really need to be accelerated is access to finance. So locally strengthening the banking sector, which is something that we also participate with partners such as MAIB, in expanding more access to finance to SMEs, more access to finance to women is really important. But the second one is building the infrastructure also in the country. So when I say ports, airports, etc., building connectivity, digital connectivity and digital inclusion, all these things can be accelerated and done better with public-private partnerships too. So I think I would finish by saying I very much agree on the opportunities for Moldova, because it's really important to look at the opportunities. When we think of the opportunities for the country, we think of improving productivity in the agriculture sector. We think of developing the IT and business outsourcing sector. We also think of renewable energy investment as a clear opportunity. But it's a kind of a whole of economy approach that needs to be taken now. And again, I mean, I think it's really encouraging to hear what we are hearing.
Since you last mentioned also agriculture, do you think there is also meaningful potential in improving agriculture? I mean, winery is already state of the art, but is there more that we should be aware?
There is, first because Moldova is extremely sensitive to climate risks, and so building resilience in the infrastructure, in the agricultural sector is really important. But when you think of the food value chain, I mean, building more local value add in the context of the potential for increasing exports, and also creating more formal, more productive and more formal jobs in the agriculture sector is going to be a key policy objective, I believe, because the informal sector is way too high in that sector in terms of jobs and quality, the quality job creation that we need.
Great. I want to go back to Dumitru and really ask you some fine details about how frequent is your interaction with the EU. I'm asking because from foreign perspective, actually when you don't yet know a country, where a country is evolving so fast, really knowing how close is your cooperation and oversight with the EU is an anchor of stability. You know, it gives people a sense that indeed, you know, there is cross-checking, accountability, and dialogue. So why don't you really tell us how is it done on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think permanent is frequent enough. So really, we are at the stage where we like to, first of all, be a predictable, reliable partner. So with whatever decisions that might impact, with whatever issues that we might have, and we're looking for a solution, we prefer to discuss in order to be understood what we are doing, because we have a certain heritage. We have sometimes legislation that is far from being EU compliant, and you know, simply, for example, sudden death, repealing everything might cost the economy. So what we're doing is really we're looking for solutions together. That's why you know, me and my colleagues, we are permanently in touch with our counterparts, be it in the Commission, in the DGs, in order to exactly to be you know, understood, to understand each other, and to look for to find commonly the solutions, because that is really important. This is building trust. This is building our image as reliable and predictable partners. When you enter, you want to have this image. You want to be known as a member, a potential member state that is sticking to commitments, that is sticking to that is adhering to the common values, and that is delivering on the promises. This is very important. Besides all the reforms and all the working groups that we have, and all the legislation and the acquis that we have to harmonize, at the core, it's also this, I'm sure.
Perfect. I guess I would like to ask all of the panelists now a bit of what is their perspective of really the state of the economy and the labor market. I mean, I think it's very honest to say that the process of accession is overwhelming for any administration. That has been experience of every single one of them, but there is also a learning curve. So after the first few years, then it can go very fast. But in terms of labor market in the rest of the economy, is the labor market very tight? Can it still have slack? And since you are quite innovative in trying to open the labor market also through a digital avenue, when do you think you'll begin to see some effects? And are you actually monitoring the numbers? Because just to be clear, the digital transition is incredibly powerful, but you have to be aware that not just Moldova, but the whole world, EU, US, has some severe limits in the way we measure it. So we often need to rely more on anecdotes than actual what is the actual official reading, because the two very much diverge.
Is me? Well, on the labor market, just a brief comment. In order for our economy to grow faster, from one perspective, it needs more people that will produce more value. So more people being employed by Moldovan companies that are more productive and produce bigger value with their time and effort. And of course, we recognize the deficit of the labor market that we have right now. So one thing we did was to make our legislation fully compliant with any kind of remote work. So any kind of, technically you can be somewhere on a beach in Greece and work for a Moldovan company and not even know where Moldova is, but this is legally possible in Moldova right now. We kind of made this sort of ramp in one of our adjustments last year. Another thing we did was, in order to offer our companies, our economy, the labor resources that it needs, be it high-skilled talent, be it labor force of a lower degree of sophistication, we have opened our labor market to the citizens of 47 countries. So right now, for example, as an EU citizen, you can come to Moldova as a tourist because you don't need a visa. And second day, you sign an employment contract, which is fully valid and fully legal. And exactly on the second day, you can already start working. And you have the 3 months to start applying for permanent residence based on this labor contract that you have, which is not a problem. So we interchanged a bit the bureaucracy, and this is offering our economy access to a pool of 1.2 billion population that can be employed in this way, be it EU, EFTA countries, the UK, North America, that's US and Canada, but also the Balkans, Turkey, Ukraine, South Caucasus, Japan, South Korea. So this is the pool of countries where you basically have absolutely no impediment to be employed by a Moldovan company, and that's in every sector. This, of course, is a temporary measure. Of course, there is a lot of need in education, in reskilling, in retraining. There is a lot of need in more proactive demographic policies that will unfortunately have effect in one generation. We cannot afford to lose to just wait for one generation, which is why we need to be kind of creative in order to achieve that.
Just one question. If I am working from the beach in Greece for a Moldovan company, can I open a bank account? Can I buy Moldovan bonds?
This is work in progress. We are advancing with the eKYC. Again, not everything is fully done through the finish line, but this is the user experience we're working on so that it is possible, because if you can do it for, I don't know, whatever other bank or fintech, then you must be able to do it with a Moldovan bank.
Thank you.
Legislation is there.
One thing which does work, which I can testament to, is that you arrive as a foreigner in Moldova, and you can find a job locally immediately. My husband did just that when we arrived in September. We arrived mid-September in Moldova, and he started a job locally on the 1st of October. So that really does work. Now, not to dwell on what you said, but maybe complement to what you talked about on the labor force. I read a very interesting report yesterday by the German economic team, where it says that there is a large group of mainly women that don't work because they have care responsibilities. It can be children, it can be elderly people. And of course, working from home opens a completely new possibility and opportunity for this group of citizens. So I really hope that we can do more to make sure that they are further integrated into the economy. And this also goes for youth. Maybe not everyone wants to travel to a larger city. Maybe people want to stay in the city, in the town or village where they grew up. But this digital nomads, the new possibilities of working from home really opens new opportunities, and we need to continue to support this kind of inclusive labor market that really includes the smallest village in the country and goes across all age groups.
Thank you.
So fully agree on the inclusive labor market. We know like labor participation is very low in Moldova. But one thing I would want to add then is another angle to it, is really all countries now in this part of Europe and in Europe even are a bit struggling with what kind of labor market transitions and skills transition need to happen for us to at the same time increase productivity, manage demographic trends that are going down, and manage also immigration trends and also the loss of jobs in the most, in the less skilled activities. So recently, you may have seen an IMF working papers that talks not about digital, but about artificial intelligence. And I think that here I have more questions than answers, but I think it's really important that we ask the question for Moldova, like for the surrounding economies. How can artificial intelligence impact, how will it impact our policy objectives? And I think on one hand, it can be an answer to the need to increase productivity. It can also be, the new generative models have something that is fascinating, which is they are accessible to anyone without any precondition in terms of skills. So anyone can access them in their language, can learn something, can educate oneself with. So I think we are going towards a world where, on one hand, digital inclusion is going to be, it's absolutely critical and needs to be accelerated. Everyone needs to have access to broadband. But second, for governments and policymakers, it can be, night and day to manage this labor and skills transition right in a new context that we are all discovering about, or managing it poorly. And so I think in the World Bank, at least, in our partnership with government, this topic of managing labor transition and skills transition is going to be, it's really what we are putting on the table right now, with a lot of global analytics on, the future of works and the future of labor markets, but recognizing also that large language models are a game changer. And so even what we have learned so far in terms of industrial transformation is not necessarily completely relevant, and we need to learn together. So I think this is also very relevant for Moldova, because you could as well create a virtuous circle between, increasing productivity in high skills jobs that will be threatened somehow also by some losses, reskilling populations that need to be reskilled, and fighting against informal labor.
Yeah, thank you. I actually want to add to what you've all mentioned, and really highlighting how, frankly, quite unique is what you're doing in terms of legislation. Because if you look at Europe, two huge bottlenecks that we have that relate to each other is that we're running out of labor. We want to do friendshoring, digitalization, energy transition, more defense. And actually, if anything, Europe has been losing people in the last decade. So there's a huge issue of scarcity, and most governments are not using the tools of digitalization. With AI, you will be able to essentially create a digital trusted CV that globally can make people stand out, essentially, in a kind of secure way. And if you don't force all of them to live in the capital city in one specific place, you can actually tap them worldwide and tax them. Really, that essentially increases the labor force of a country like overnight on a completely different scale. So I really applaud you on this. It's very original. So I think I've quizzed you on quite a lot of fronts, but let me ask the audience if there is any pending issues that you would like to raise at this stage. No, I think then I have succeeded. And thank you so much. Thank you all for your valuable comments, and thank you for participating.
Thank you.